Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. Broadcasting live presents Two Guys and a Bible with Don Preston and William Bell. Join us each week at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central as we bring you exciting, sound, challenging, and comforting messages regarding the end times. Thank you for tuning in today. Don Preston is the founder of Preterist Research Institute, or PRI. Don is a prolific author, having written and published 19 books, a host of audio and DVD studies, and is a debater and defender of the full preterist view. His websites are BibleProphecy.com, Eschatology.org, and DonKPreston.com. William Bell is the founder of AllThingsFulfilled.com Ministries and has a website bearing the same name, and has authored 3 books, audios, and DVDs. He has published hundreds of articles and recordings. And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two Guys and a Bible broadcast with Don Preston and William Bell. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is William Bell. Welcome to Two Guys and a Bible right here on Fulfill Radio. And for some reason, I can't hear myself talk, so I don't know what's going on. But I think Don heard me a minute ago, so I suppose that I am live. Okay, so you can hear me now, right?
I can.
Oh, okay. All right, so, well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Aquaba. That means welcome. In tree.
Well, welcome back, William Bell.
Thank you.
It's great to have you back. Great to hear your voice again. I'm really, really excited and eager to hear about your trip. Folks, as you know, for the last couple of weeks, William has been in Ghana fulfilling a lifelong dream to go over there. And I got to talk to him one time, I guess after he'd been over there a couple of days, and he had already had quite an adventure trying to get into his room. But anyway, it is great, William, to have you back. And like I said, I'm anxious. I know our audience is anxious to hear a report from you on how things went in Ghana. So glad everything went well.
All right. Well, thank you, Don. I just got back this afternoon about 2:15, 2:20, and
Wow.
I have been awake and traveling since about 3 a.m. yesterday. So, because I went to Barakoom, and which is sort of about halfway north of the country, west, I think, and from Accra, and stayed there. Actually, I left Cape Coast and then went to Accra, then caught the bus there. So it was about a 9-hour trip on the way back, and then from there, all I did was kind of waited around until time to go on the plane, where I had to fly another 11 hours to get to New York, and then to Atlanta, and then finally to Memphis. So it's been a long 2 days journey, getting home. But I'm grateful to be here. Good to see my wife again, and good to be back with you on the show. It was a dream fulfilled. I tell you, I had so much fun, and it was such a learning experience that it was hard to take it all in. And just so many wonderful experiences. And you talk about people who are just absolutely incredible and amazing, both in their hospitality as well as their industry. Just amazing people, and very humble, very sincere, very kind, and just absolutely amazing. And I've never seen the kind of service that individuals who don't know you could render toward a person that I've seen in those people. And of course, it's already has a reputation of being one of the most, or the most friendliest country in Africa, and they certainly did not fall short of that. The place is buzzing with activity. When I got there, of course, it was 7:45 in the evening, so it was already dark. But all along the streets, you have merchants, everybody walking around selling something. You can get anything you want on the way from the airport to the hotel room, from Q-tips to anything. I mean, they've got it. and it was just amazing to see that. And my host told me that it was Solomon. He told me, he says, now this will go on until dawn, and then another crew will come out at dawn, and they will carry it on till night again. So it never stops. The activity there just never stops. And, that's so amazing when you think about the U.S. and you come here and businesses are shutting down at 5 o'clock. They're shutting down at, at 9 and 10 for the most part, and it gets quiet on our streets. But that really doesn't happen for the most part. I mean, it does in the rural areas, but out in the major, metropolitan areas, it doesn't happen. People are doing things all day long, all night long, and it's just amazing. And a business there can be just a bench sitting on the side of the road. Somebody is selling something. And if they don't have a bench, they're walking. So, and all you have to do is just be in walking speed if you're driving, and that's easy to do with as much traffic as is there. And people, are catching you, through the window. You roll down your window, you buy something, you keep rolling. I mean, that's as fast as they go. And, it was so amazing to see these things. And I know I've seen people carry things on their heads before, et cetera. But when you see a woman carrying a full-length dining room table on her head downtown in broad daylight, you know that you're looking at something special. And then there was another young lady who had, absolutely. It was another young lady. And the sad thing about it is my friend told me before I left, he said, take a good camera. Well, I thought, okay, my phone takes good pictures. But, trying to take pictures with these cell phones, when you got to try to, click on them, get them on the, because when you turn them on, sometimes they're taking pictures of you and you want to switch that over. By the time you do that, you've lost a shot. And I lost so many good shots like that. And then when your phone goes dead on you, it's just total disadvantage. So I'll never go back without having a dedicated camera to take pictures. But anyway, there's the other lady who had a stack of peanuts on a tray, and it was about, I would say it was about 16 inches high. They were all neatly stacked. And I mean, she's walking around, not a single peanut falls off the top. It's just amazing. This is incredible stuff. I mean, it was little things like that just had me so in awe of what they did. And I mean, you just run out of descriptions to talk about all of the things that they carried around. Now, let me tell you, I know there's a lot to say about this, even the mission and purpose for which I went. But I want to talk about some of these side stories a little bit because they were so fascinating. After I got there, I stayed in Accra like the first night and part of the next day, and then we left there and went to Cape Coast. We stayed in a little town called Jukwa. But at any rate, I was at the Rainforest Motel or resort, I guess is what that was, where a lot of people come and they do bird watching. So, people were coming in groups, and from all around the world, they go there and they do bird watching because you've got the Cocoon National Park there. And this is where they have the suspended bridge, which I did, walk all of the suspended bridges. But there was one evening when and man, it's hot there too. It's very hot every day. I think we only experienced one power outage because sometimes the lights go out either, I don't know whether it's either to conserve or whether they are, doing some improvements or whatever, but they did go out and stayed out quite a while during the day. But at any rate, one day I was going to walk down the road and they barely let you do anything for yourself. So I was at the receptionist desk, and I said, okay, I'm going to go down and just get me some water, or, I might have bought a piece of fruit or whatever. But anyway, so I walked in, and the receptionist said, let me walk you to the street to get a cab. Well, it wasn't that much. This is maybe 70 feet from the office down to the street. And so she was going to flag a taxi for me. And after we stood there for about, I guess, a good 5-10 minutes, I was already sweating, and then she started to sweat. And I said, look, I don't want you to stand out here. You got to go back in your office and take care of business. I said, I'll just go ahead and walk. Well, she saw this young lady coming down the road, and she's, stopped her. She didn't know who she was. She said, would you assist him? Would you walk down the road with him? Because they're very careful of, they don't want you to, have any trouble or anything. So this young lady, very petite and small, said, yes, I will walk with him. Her name was Ellen. I'll never forget it. And I'll tell you a story and the reason why I won't. But at any rate, so we started walking. And then after walking a little bit, I started having her to tutor me a little bit in the language. And so we exchanged a few words that she was helping me to learn and showing me how to pronounce, et cetera. So by the time we got there, I had bought this little backpack in the Ghana cloth, and I was carrying that with me. And it wasn't heavy. It was just, I had a few things in it that I carried around, and I had it on my shoulder. Well, once we got down to the end of the road, we were going up I was headed to the barbershop. That's where I was going. And so I was going to the barbershop, and when you turn off the gravel road, you start going up this hill a little bit, but there's the very uneven, it wasn't hilly, but you know how you're walking up a dirt road and you got the uneven surface and everything, and sometimes it's slick and your foot can slip or whatever, it's just very uneven. So as I was going, the backpack was falling off my shoulder. And but it wasn't because it was heavy or anything. It was just the angle, at which I might have kind of leaned as a result of going up the uneven terrain there. Well, she was walking beside me, and she looked at me, and she says, "You are struggling." She says, "Let me carry that for you." So she took my back. She took my backpack and put it on her back. She strapped it on both sides, and she walked with it, and, of course, and everything. Went to the barbershop. This lady sat down in the barbershop. She, and I said, okay, thank you. She says, no. She says, I want to serve you. She sat down in the barbershop, waited until the guy finished my hair, and then was going to walk me back to my room. I said, that's okay. Thank you very much. And I
Wow.
gave her, and her statement to me was, I want to serve you. And, man, I was so just floored by that. And but I told her, I said, no, you don't have to go. So I let her go, and I gave her, a little something for her time and did it. But that is the way they are with all things. And it was just an amazing impact that she made, just that quickly and in that little short period of time. That made a lasting impression on me. But like I said, that was no unique situation. It was just the fact, it was one of the first ones that had such an impact like that. But anyway,
well, let me
tell people. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you a very quick question, and then I want you to go on. What do you think is the origin of that attitude of such helpfulness and a desire to help people?
Well, I don't know, other than the fact that it's probably their cultural tradition. It sounds like stuff straight out of the Bible to me. In terms of the kind of yes, the kind of hospitality that they show, and I mean, it is so genuine. And here's another story. One night we went to church. Okay, there are not many. There are no lights sometimes going up to these houses, and these people were, they were very poor, and so we had to walk up to the church building to where Solomon preached, and it was like behind some houses, round the bend, across this little dip and that little dip, and it's in the dark, and the guy was using his phone to light the ground so we could see where to step, And after walking, I guess, what could have been a good maybe a half mile to finally get to this little 12 by 13 room where they had church. And so we finished. And I think, that was on a Sunday when we went at this time. So because I spoke that Sunday, and I had my roller bag satchel with me. Well, and it was kind of heavy because I had plenty of stuff in it, so heavy that they, eventually the taxi drivers broke the handle. But anyway, on my way back, there was this young lady, and she was very petite as well. She looked like a teenager, and I couldn't tell how old she was. She could have been 20, I don't know, but she looked like a teenager. And so we were coming back, and we had to walk back that same little space to get back to the road where we're going to, catch one of the little buses to take us back to the hotel. And so after we had walked, all the way back to the church building, and on our way back, I had my bag and I was carrying it by the handle. And the brother who is Solomon's right-hand man, he's one of the elder brothers there. He said, let someone carry it for you. Let this young lady carry it. I said, no. I mean, this girl she is tiny. I said, no. He says, oh, yes. He said, there's nothing she can handle. I said, this is heavy. He says, oh, she can handle that. The girl took that bag, Don, put it on her head, and she walked all the way down to the road with that bag on her head. And I'm talking about this is not a straight, flat, you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is places where your foot slips. There's wet mud in some place. I mean, I felt so bad that she did it, but she did it, never broke into a sweat. I'm saying, okay, that was it. But anyway, I could go on and on with those kinds of stories. Let me at least talk a little bit about the mission that I had in going there. One, I wanted to go there. I've been talking to Solomon for a while, for about a year or so, and of course, helping him with the study of eschatology, which Roy and Holger, they have helped him quite a bit, and you have as well. So he's now pretty well versed in the subject of eschatology. And just shortly before my departure, we started and I would say he started, but I helped him along with it, a study group, and it's getting some pretty good activity from that study group. He's very active in the process. And so I had talked to him about coming because we had corresponded a time or two. I'd sent him a little bit of, financial help and everything. And I wanted to go there to look at, what his real situation was, kind of boots on the ground to see exactly what was going on and to see, what can be done to help. Because I had spoken to him a time or two about, some of his needs, et cetera. But I really wanted to see that. And so after arriving, I saw, some things. And I don't want to say too much about his, his personal situation because I don't want to say anything that could be, embarrassing to him or anything. But it was pretty dire. And he doesn't have an income, for preaching, for the most part. And I think they had a treasury, and the bank where they were keeping their money, something happened, and they lost temporary use of it, and the bank is very slow about allowing them to recover from that. But it's not very much because the people there are very poor, and so they're not giving very much, and so he doesn't have a lot. As a matter of fact, when you say things like that concerning them, I mean, it's really that they don't have much. You're talking in a place where some of these people sleep on concrete floors and or very thin, mattresses and things like that, and just don't have the kind of resources that we are accustomed to here in the places where I was. Now, that's not like all over Africa, and it's not all over the place where I was, but this is very common with them. And so after seeing that, I started looking at, my aim was not to just go there and teach because, he's capable as a teacher, and I know teaching people, that's one end, but I was looking at how can we find some solutions to the problem that they have, and his problem in particular, so that he could be, supported to the degree to where he'll be able to, carry on that work. Because another goal of his and objective is there is we went to see this chief, and that was and I have to tell you, I had been going to the gym for, I guess, a couple of months before taking this trip. And it wasn't that I was going just for the trip. I had, signed up for a membership because I wanted to, improve my own health. And I tell you, if I had not been doing that and walking the treadmill in the gym, because I go 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times a week, if I had not done that, I would have been in no shape whatsoever to handle this trip. because everywhere you go, for the most part, they walk, and I mean they walk in the hot heat, and just do it. No complaints, no sweat, whatever. They're walking. So they walked me. So the first 2 days, that man, I'm huffing and puffing, but I was in pretty good. So by the third day, I mean I was fine. As a matter of fact, one day when we didn't have anything to do, I just got out and walked because I didn't want to lose the ability to do it while I was there. I said, look, I'm going to stay in shape. But we walked miles. I mean, and anyway, we went to this village, where they had this chief, because we were there to talk about, some business with him. And so while we were there, we and I almost forgot what I was saying, how I started into that story, but that was a part of it. So we were going there to look at things that we could do to strategize. And the reason I said that is that was a place where there were people in that village who wanted to attend his congregation, but they are so poor they can't afford to, spend a few dollars to get a taxi to come there and pick them up and bring them to church and take them home every Sunday. So one of his objectives was to start another congregation in that particular area. Well, he's barely existing with the one that he has, and he's doing that with very little funds. So to start the new one where he would have access to another group of people is another one of his challenges. And so we were talking about, what it would take to get some of that underway so that he could increase, his membership, he could serve more people, and they wouldn't have to come so far because there was a community there where they would be able to, come to a congregation that would be near to them. So that was another of the objectives that we had in looking at what they were doing. And so my aim was to assess that, to see what could we come up with that could probably, possibly produce some funds for him without him having to ask for handouts, if you understand what I'm saying, to allow them to be self-determining in creating something that would sustain them, and at least allow him to be able to function from that perspective. And I think we came up with some pretty good ideas along the road that, we're going to try to implement. And I did some things for them to help them out a little bit along that line. But that was, for the most part, what the mission was in that particular trip. And, of course, the other side was to see a little bit of Africa as much as I could, during the time that I was there. And like I said, I went to, the Elmina Castle where they had the slaves and, went on that tour. I went to the Cocoon National Park. I learned a lot about trees that I forgot about, but I took some pictures. But to walk that suspended bridge, which was amazing as well, to see that. But that, too, was because we had to go up about 250 feet above sea level. And that was a challenge. And they have these little rest stops along the way. Well, it was early in the morning when we went. And I tell you what, by the time I got to the first rest stop, I was the only one that was huffing and puffing. And I had to stop and take a break and just catch my breath, because, I mean, it was tiring. And I had seen it before on YouTube. I'd seen guys walk, and actually it was a guy from the U.S. who had gone, and he had to do the same thing. I mean, he sat down right on the rocks going up because he couldn't make it up. And because it is very, very challenging. But after I took that first break, I guess I caught my wind, and from that point on, I was good. As a matter of fact, I kind of led the trek from that point forward. It was about four of us with the tour guide. And he was a guy, looked like he could have been in his 50s or 60s, and he never broke a sweat, never puffed or huffed the whole time, and just went straight on up, but he stopped to wait on us, when we took that break. And then we got to the bridge, and this is, I guess, it's in the jungle, so it's like 70 feet, we're in the top of the trees with this bridge that was built, and they say it was some Canadians that came and assisted in the building of it, but it runs from tree to tree. And it's about 5 of them. The shortest one is about 30 feet. I think the longest one is about 50 to 60 feet. And it's just about a foot wide suspended on ropes, and you walk that thing, and as you're walking it, it's swaying with you, and so you have to kind of, you have to kind of steady your balance, and they tell you not to look down. Well, I'm not afraid of heights because, I used to be a lineman, so I used to climb 175 foot towers and hang over the side of them, so that part didn't bother me. The swinging, you just have to kind of get your stride, and then you could make it. But I was first getting through that among the whole crowd that went through, because by that time, like I said, I'd caught my breath and had a second wind, and so I was good on it. But that was great. I tell people the bat story. I don't know I know you told some of them. You shared some of that.
I only told it briefly.
Yeah. Well, the first night that I got into my room at the lodge, I was taking a shower, because, if you be out in that heat, you got to shower either once or twice a day at least just to. So I was taking a shower that night, and after coming out of the shower, I went over by the side of the bed. I don't know what I was about to do, either plug in my phone or something, the charger, and I happened to look up at the curtain, and there was a bat. And when I saw the bat, I thought, I said, what? And so by the time I saw the bat saw me and started flying around the room. And I don't know which one of us was trying to get away from the other one the hardest, But I ran for the bathroom and shut the door because he was flying all over the room. And after holding the door closed for a minute, I finally opened it and looked back out. I didn't see him flying, and so he had landed on the door of the room. And so I took my towel and kind of wound it around a little bit and swung at him and hit him and knocked him down. I thought I had killed him, but apparently I did not, because, I just kind of swept him out of the room, and I said, okay, well, you won't get back in here. And so the next day, I went to sleep. It was a little tough to sleep, but I went to sleep that night. And so Solomon and his friend John came in the next morning, and I told him about the bat, And so he said, oh, we saw a bat on the wall coming down the hall. And I said, yeah, that thing was in here last night. And so John just kind of casually looked around the room. He found a piece of paper, grabbed the paper, went outside in the hall, and, like you were grabbing a cricket or something, he grabbed the bat, took it outside, and released it and let it go. I said, okay, he's done this a time or two.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going near it, because I'm thinking rabies and all this kind of stuff. I said, I don't want to get bit by a bat. Yeah. But, and that was it. We had a good service they had a prayer service, which was a very good service. They had their Sunday service was good. And I haven't gotten accustomed to people translating for me because it breaks my thoughts so much. You can only say so much, and then they stop to translate. And Solomon, I think, preached. He preached through the translation, at least from what I could determine, because I would say a little something, then I know he would translate, but then after he translate, then he would start to expound on what was being said. And
yeah.
And then he turned to go on. So that kind of drew it out a little bit, extended it quite a bit, but it also breaks your thought because it takes you a long time for it to come back to you so you can then move on with the next point. So I just tried to stay in the flow. And the same thing happened to me when I was in Nicaragua, when they were doing the Spanish. So it's a hard thing because now when I've seen translators on television, I just see the preacher preaching and the translators there just translating all along as he's going. The preacher doesn't stop. But with them, you say a few words and then you stop. You say a few words and you stop. And you wait for them to give you the cue after they've gotten through explaining everything. So that made it a little tough. And
I can understand that very well because when I went to France some years ago, I had to have a translator. And it was so difficult for them because at the time, I was still speaking pretty rapidly. and it was the son of my host who was going to do the translating, and he came up to me. He said, "Brother Don," he said, "please, please, slow down." And I was saying the very thing that you were just saying, that uh, I was going to have to speak just a couple of sentences and hold my thought while he translated, and then he'd have to give me the go ahead, and I have to make sure that I'm picking up where I left off. So I understand very well the difficulty that you're talking about there, of trying to deal with the translator and trying to keep up with your thought and what have you. It's not the easiest thing in the world.
It most definitely is not. So, and I don't know what he told him after what I said, but apparently, it was fine. And then the Sunday after that, he had 3 baptisms. And he's
Wow.
baptizing these people in water that you can't even see the bottom of. I mean, it's murky, muddy water. These people are getting baptized in what they wear to church on Sunday. They don't have robes or change clothes to get baptized in. So, I mean, that is just admirable when you look at, how down to earth they are, how, just very humble in terms of that. And they don't complain about any of that. I mean, that's the norm, and that's what they do. So, that was very good. So and I remember the lady who had, I think the 2 of them who had come, because that was the first time I didn't see them that Wednesday night when I went, but they were there on Sunday. And so the next Sunday following that, they were baptized. And so that was very, very good. But yeah.
You said something there, William, that reminds me of how pampered we are in America, how really honestly soft we have become. When you talk about people, they were baptized in the clothes that they wear every day, just getting by on the bare subsistence levels, and yet they have a level of joy, a level of confidence and assurance that in America, we are so pampered, we are so spoiled, that we think we've just got to have the very best of this, the very best of that, and if we don't, then we are just at worst thing in all the world. And people's self-worth in America is determined, pardon me, to a great extent in the eyes of society by what we have. Our self-worth and our standing is determined by the cars that we drive, the clothes that we wear, the homes that we live in, houses that we live in, et cetera, the communities that we live in. And everything that you're sharing with us there speaks of a people whose self-worth comes from within. It is a recognition. It's a recognition of walking in the love of God and determining their worth from that, and not by anything externally.
Yes, that is so very true, and so evident when you are in their presence. Just to give you an idea of the kind of service. Even when I was at the lodge, I gave a tip to the cook, and I learned that from one of the guys that I had been working with, doing some work with here in Memphis. And so one day we were out to lunch, and he said, take this back and give it to the cook. Well, he actually went back and met the cook and talked with the, I think it was a guy, talked with him for about 5 minutes or so. It might have been a lady, I can't remember. And then gave them a tip. And I said, wow, that's the first time I've ever seen anybody tip the cook. And right. So that made an impression on me, so it stayed with me. So when I was there, the food was good, and so I decided to send a tip back for the cook. Well, this lady was so very impressed. And I tell you, from that day forward, she sent me a message, and she would ask me, have you eaten today? Make sure, and I told her, the pineapple juice there, fresh, squeezed, chilled white pineapple juice, some of the most delicious I've ever had. You know how much I like, natural
Oh yeah.
foods and everything. And I tell you, it was absolutely delicious. But that lady would make sure that I ate every single day. And if I hadn't come to the restaurant to eat, she would say, "Are you eating today?" And make sure that I got some food. So they just took care of me. Of course, I was nice to them as well. And but they made sure that everything was okay. And even the barber, I'm his uncle now. He's the son of the guy that works with Solomon. And so I spent a couple of evenings just talking with him, helping them to sort of change their mindset about who they are. They think they're very poor people, but they're really not. They're very wealthy. They just don't have the money to take advantage of the wealth that they have. And so I was trying to convey those kind of thoughts to him and help him to open up his mind about possibilities and everything. He's a great young man. This is the kind of kid, he's about 27 or 28. He looks like he's 15. And he runs the barbershop there. And, he said, "Here's some pictures of my haircuts, when I do my hair." He says, "I don't put all these fancy things in my hair and everything." He says, "because I don't want to dishonor my father." And I thought, how incredible for a young man to be like that. And I mean, he's 28 years old now, and talks about how he doesn't want to dishonor his father, and so he won't, just dress any kind of way. He won't cut his hair, to look, like some of the outlandish styles that people wear, all because it would bring dishonor to his father. And so that's very good. Another thing I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to another issue, kind of the breakdown of the family in America and the sense of not respecting father and mother. And it's amazing that you're telling the story of a young man almost 30 years old saying he didn't want to do this, didn't want to do that because he didn't want to disrespect his father. That's pretty amazing.
Yes. Just so many of those kind of examples existed among them. And when we talk about family, you can see the strength of the family among them. And I mean, all the way from the elderly people, which they call Nana, and down through the children. The children are so respectful. I think I saw one kid, and that was when we were at the Elmina Castle, where they were on a school field trip. And one kid, a young boy, had sort of wandered about 15 feet away from the rest of the crowd and was doing his own thing instead of paying attention to the tour guide. And his teacher looked at him and said, "You get right back over here." And of course he did immediately, but that's the only time I saw a kid that was out of line. I mean, never. They do not disrespect their parents. They don't disrespect the elderly. And it doesn't matter who you are or whatever. That's just the way they are. And that was very, very impressive. Another thing, of course, understanding that they're poor people, but they eat very healthy. They eat very healthy. I mean, of course, they're eating these fresh fruits and vegetables. And I had to experience it. Like, you go there and you get the coconut, and they just cut it up right there, cut a little top out of it, and make a spoon. But they let you drink straight from the coconut. So I had that experience, and that was pretty cool. And then they'll, if you want the meat out of it, they'll cut you a spoon and let you scrape that out and do it. But the skills that they have is just absolutely amazing, and they do everything under the sun. I mean, you name it, they've got somebody who does it. Just very, very, very amazing, very intriguing. I was just so impressed with the whole thing. We went to a field to look at some of the crops and where they were going to plant crops, and of course, a little pathway through it, kind of like a little jungle deal. It wasn't really jungle, but you know how you've got all of the brush and everything grown up. And so the guy gave me his machete. I think everybody who is 2 years old and up can use a machete in Africa. And so he gave it to me and had me cut a little bit, just to get the swing of things. It was very good. So I tried to take in a lot of what was going on with the people so I could understand them as best as I possibly could. They're very assertive. They're very aggressive in some ways, especially if they're in business, if they're like taxi drivers. Now, that is the scene that, I guess the closest thing we might see to would be New York or something like that. And you dare not want to drive on the streets with them. It's just amazing the way they weave in and out and the way they, assert their way into the smallest space so they can go. And, they don't have a lot of what we call road rage. There is some, but not much. And usually when they have a little road rage, it's just for a moment, and then they laugh at each other and just keep going. And, it's very, very good with that. So, I guess it doesn't sound like a lot was accomplished in terms of what the mission was, but it really was. I'm not giving you all the details because I don't want to give them at this particular point in terms of what, some of the things that we talked about. But they were all designed to put them in a position to help them be able to sustain, to establish and sustain themselves from a financial point of view over a long period of time, and that's what we looked at, and the things that we talked about, and the kind of planning that we were putting in place, so that when they are teaching, and even in establishing a congregation, for example, in the other areas I mentioned, and maybe even in another town, they would be able to do it. And so with the emphasis that Solomon has made on the eschatology, then when they're able to, start these new congregations, they will have a foundation for eschatology to grow from that point. And that's what my focus was, to look at how can we create and establish, some works there that are going to forward, the mission in terms of eschatology and allow them to be self-sustaining, as opposed to being, sort of dependent from that perspective. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that to me is just so tremendously exciting. We talk very often, William, you and I have talked about this an awful lot, about what is the future of covenant eschatology? How are things going to progress and what have you? And we never know. We literally never know how much good we are doing. We get emails, and by the way, I forwarded you an email that I had gotten this week. No, it's Tuesday, might have been Sunday.
Yeah, I read it.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this individual said that if it were not for William Bell and Don Preston and the ministries which we have here on Fulfilled Radio and on our YouTube videos and what have you, that he just didn't know where he would be in his walk with the Lord. That type of thing is so incredibly humbling. It's so exciting and thrilling, and it's motivating to just keep doing what we're doing. And yet here is William that has gone to Ghana. He has helped plant the seeds for future generational growth and the spread of the truth. And who knows? I mean, I'm real confident that I'll never be going to Ghana. That's never been on my bucket list, I must say. Pardon me. And yet, the fact is, this has been a lifelong dream of William. He's gone there, obviously, planted some seeds for future stability, future growth of the churches there. And what will that mean 50 years, 100 years from now? We don't know. But the fact is that the seeds have been planted. And it's just like here in America, with the countless numbers of people that we're hearing from who are discovering the truth of eschatology, some of whom I got an email. I didn't forward this one to you, but this guy said, I'm 70 years old, which when I very first hear that, I thought, well, he's an old geezer, but then I turned 70 on the last day of this month, so, he's a young man. But anyway, he said he's 70 years old, and he, too, had been listening to the radio program, watching the YouTube videos, has become a preterist, but he said, I attend a real small country church. And he said, they're dispensational. And he said, I'm a coward. And he said, I really don't want to disrupt the peace of this congregation, so what do I do? Because I do want this truth to spread. Well, I mean, if you want the truth to spread, then, I mean, there's nothing to do but to do, literally. If you start telling people the truth, just like in the days of Jesus, some people are going to like it, and some people are going to reject it. Mm-hmm. And so there is no, quote, peaceful way to spread revolutionary ideas. I mean, that's just all there is to it. There are prices to be paid. But, I've got to tell you, William, I've sat here and listened to you. I have just been, thrilled to the core at the stories that you've told us there. And I know, like you said, that what you shared with us doesn't even touch the hem of the garment of what you experienced over there. And I'm pretty sure that you could talk for a week and a half or 2 weeks, which is how long you were gone, and sharing experiences. What was, as you reflect on it, what was the greatest challenge? Obviously, there are cultural issues, but what was the greatest challenge that you personally felt while you were there?
Well, that's a good question. Let's see, the greatest challenge. Well, obviously, the language to a degree, because you've got that barrier to begin with. But it's easy to communicate with them because they learn English at a very early age. So, and of course, Africans in general. Like one of the guys that I was hanging out with, he spoke 5 different languages, and he was from what they called a royal family. So that part was, it's just the fact that when you hear them talking, they're talking in their language that you can't understand what they're saying. I'm able to pick up a few words because I did start studying a little bit before going, but there's no way you can learn enough about their language without being around it and hearing it and really putting some time into it in order to get it. So that was one. Another major, the barrier is the transportation, because they don't have a very good transportation system. And I mean, they could have probably turned a 9-hour trip if they had the transportation system in place, like good roads, into about a 4-hour trip, maybe. They could have, because there were times when we had to, it was just a one lane all the way through. Okay, so one lane going, one lane coming back, and you're running behind trucks carrying loads and people on motorbikes, et cetera, and you can't pass, and all those kind of things. And then sometimes the roads are so bad that the driver has to go from one side of the street to the other just to get to where he's going, and then we have to go through a detour, et cetera. So that is a major challenge that they're facing, but they're addressing that. I think they're working on a fast monorail train, and they're doing some improvements to the roads, but that's not happening fast enough. It's not going to happen like tomorrow. So that is that's a big challenge. Another challenge, if you are a foreigner, is that you have to be always aware of your surroundings, and that's why they wouldn't allow me to do anything alone and by myself, because they were very protective of me and making sure that I was always safe, that someone was always with me, and so that's one of the challenges that you face. Another challenge would be the food. In terms of, you making sure that and my doctor had advised me of that before I went, because, I went to the doctor, and once I got I had to go get his approval to take the yellow fever shot and everything before going there.
Right. Yeah.
And of course,
Right.
he advised me on the malaria pills and also what to eat and what not to eat. So mostly, to eat the cooked food and to stay away from a lot of the fresh vegetables because there may be either pesticides or bacteria, et cetera, that we're not accustomed to. And I didn't have any problems. I never got sick or anything the whole time I was there. So I did pretty good. Someone gave me some apples, but I didn't eat those. I actually, there was a guy who was hungry. We were downtown one day, and this guy came up and asked for something to help him to eat and to feed his family. And so I had been carrying around. I had just bought, some fresh mango that was cut up in cubes that I was definitely going to eat. And I think I had another whole one in there and some pineapple and then about 2 or 3 apples that had been given to me. And I knew I wasn't going to eat the apples because of the peel and everything. So and nothing was wrong with them. I mean, they were just fresh fruit. So when he came, I gave them to him. And, the one thing when you have people begging in America, sometimes if you offer them food, and I've done it several times when they're asking, can you help me get something to eat? If you offer them food, they will turn you down. They don't want it because they want the money so they can go do something else.
Exactly right.
Well, when I gave this guy that bag of food, it seemed like he was headed straight to the house to share it with his children. And so I felt very good about that from that perspective. And there was another little young lady that I wanted to help, and we didn't get a chance to because, I was busy taking care of some things. But she was sleeping on the porch out in the public, and I knew she was probably hungry. I think she had even asked for something. And I guess they see it all the time. And it's so easy to do for them because it doesn't take very much, to do it. It really doesn't. And I was going to buy her lunch, and just give her some food. But something happened, didn't get a chance to do that, and it really kind of hurt my heart that I wasn't able to do that. But I would say those are the challenges, transportation. Like, look, if you're going somewhere, I tell you, this is a sound that just kind of stuck in my head. They have these minibuses, and when you catch a minibus, they're going to make sure that bus is full before they head to the next town.
Yeah.
And so I counted the people in the minibus. It was 23 of us in that bus. and then they have some of their, either luggage or packages and everything. And sometimes they have to tie the doors shut in the back. And you're talking about, driving a pretty good distance sometimes to go from town to town in that. So you're driving. Wow. But what really amazed me was the guy, like, when they were going to Accra, this guy would be saying, Accra, 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 Accra. And it just stayed with me that he would say that. But that's how they kept call out the towns. He's like the mate. Who assists people on and off the bus, making sure they get to their stops and they get their packages and stuff off. But that's what you're going to ride. And these roads are rough. Like I said, they're weaving from one side to the other, just trying to get through the potholes and things like that, and slow drivers and all. So that's a challenge. And there's no air conditioning in them. You can just give it up thinking that you're going to be riding in an air-conditioned car. There's dust. Look, I was putting on seat belts at first, and excuse me, here's my phone came on. Sorry. But anyway, and it's like, how you can have something real dusty and you can pop it and all the dust flies out. So I put the seatbelt on and over my right shoulder, and I noticed I started having all this red, dust from this red gravel and everything getting all over me. So I just decided, look, I'm not putting on the seatbelt. I'm just going to it got so bad one time that I put it on. The lady sitting in the back seat of the taxi, she just started brushing off my clothes. And there was there was one taxi driver that I drove with who kept a clean taxi, and he even had a like a paintbrush cleaning off his radio and everything. So that was interesting. But for the most part, I mean, you're just running through the dust. So you either get you a dust cover or something for your nose to keep the dust out, and for your head, and you ride. But that's the way it is, and that becomes a challenge. You have to negotiate pretty much. I think I got taken maybe twice the whole time I was there, and it wasn't much. One guy, when I came from the bus station to one town, he wanted to, because I was alone at that point. Now, when I was with someone, they never would allow them to do anything like that. So I had ridden enough, I had gone enough to know approximately what that distance cost. So, and the interesting thing, look, John, what was interesting was this was the only guy who was going to tell me to watch out for all the tricksters, right? He's telling me, look, man, you got to be fast, because they will take you. And then when I get to where I'm going, he asked me for like 40 CDs, which is about $5, okay? And usually it costs less than that. And I said, what? I said, I've never paid that much to go anywhere. And I said, at the most, this is about 10 CDs, which is $2, And so he said, well, it's nighttime. And it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, no, it's morning. He said, it's nighttime, and I had to carry your luggage. I said, no, it's morning. And so he said, well, yeah, you're right. So by the time we got done, I had gotten him down to about 15 CDs from 40. And I said, that's all I'm doing. And one guy was standing there looking at us, and I guess he thought because see, when they know you're American, they think you got money, and so they're going to charge you more. And the only other time was when I was at the lodge, the same lodge where I was when I first got there to Cape Coast. My clothes needed washing, and so I asked where was the laundry mat so I could go and wash my clothes, which I didn't think there was one in town or anything. And one of the young ladies who was also a waitress there, she said, oh, I'll wash them. She said, just give them to me. And so I put them in a bag and handed them. I said, how much does it cost? She says, nothing. And she took them, and I don't know whether she washed them or somebody else washed them, dried them, brought them back. Never asked for a dime. I gave her a little tip.
Wow.
And so this other guy comes in, and he was the one cleaning the room. And, and a habit that both you and I have, and that is, we usually tip the person who cleans the room when we're done.
Yeah.
So I was leaving the other day, and so I gave him a tip. I said, are you the person who cleans the room? I said, well, look, I appreciate it. I gave him a tip. And then I had to close, and he said, do your clothes need washing? I said, yeah. He said, well, it doesn't cost you anything. And then when he brings them back, he asked me for money for the clothes. And I thought, how strange is that? But because I didn't know him, and I knew that I'd gotten them done before for no charge. And so I went ahead and paid him. And then I shared that with the other people, and they were outraged that he did it.
Oh.
And, yeah, so it was just one of those things. But for the most part, man, it was a blast. It was absolutely incredible. I do plan to go back and continue to work on some of the things that I'm working on, but I will be able to do some of that from here. And if there's anybody listening who wants to help even a little bit, just let me know, because I do have some objectives there, and I think they will be materialized very quickly. Things in place. I'm grateful to those who shared and helping me to get there, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was an experience I will never forget, and one that I look forward to experiencing again. So thank you very much, and thank you, Don, for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about what that trip was all about.
Yeah, that is just such a thrilling report, William, and God bless you, Godspeed, especially on a return trip, if you may be able to do that, and I hope you can. It sounds like a great deal was accomplished on this, and that even more prospects of success are in the future for that. Again, I knew that it was something that you had wanted to do for many, many years, and it's always good when a guy can fulfill his dreams like that. and not only fulfill a dream, but also do some good for the Lord's kingdom as well at the same time. So it's absolutely fantastic. And that brings us right up to the close of tonight's program. William, great to have you back. Great to have you back here on the program. Great to hear the message. And folks, thanks for being with us here on Two Guys and a Bible on Fulfilled Radio, a voice you can trust. With that, I will say good night. God bless.
Thank you for joining the Two Guys and a Bible radio broadcast. On behalf of Dunn Preston and myself, we'd like to say have a very pleasant day and may God bless. Until next time, we'll see you on Fulfill Radio, a voice